Thank you for spending another midweek moment with the Wisconsin property taxpayers. I'm Paul Rozeski, and today's Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025. We are smack dab in the middle of getting the state budget approved. So, no preamble, no run-up. Other than wishing you a wonderful 4th of July, we are just going to jump into some news together. And let's start and do nothing but talk about the state budget. The Senate got a few hours of work in starting this morning and have basically been in a recess working for hours behind the scenes going into the evening, and they're still not back. More on what they're working on later. In other budget news, here's an update on what was in the last midweek moment. As far as I know, there are still two Republicans that are unhappy with how the budget process is going. The first is Steve Nass, who hasn't voted to approve a budget in over a decade and has already voiced his disapproval. He has said that if there are spending increases in this budget, he's not going to vote for it. He wants the budget to be flat. So that's not happening. He's a no. He is still joined by Chris Kapenga. I'm assuming that because this is a post from him on X this morning before the Senate started their floor session. And I quote, 8:45 a.m. just received the 421-page, $111.1 billion budget for the first time, which I'm supposed to read through and vote to approve in the next hour. Looks like a Nancy Pelosi-inspired approach. Approve it first, then we can read it. Kind of funny how this process can easily have the same dysfunction at the federal and state levels. That wasn't his quote. That was just my add-on. Also, for the record, it's a $114 billion budget, not $111 billion. Also, as a related note, they have been standing informal, which is another way of them just kind of being in recess, and they've been there for hours, like I said before. Before I get to what they're doing, let's take a quick look at some of the stuff that's in the budget, because from a spending standpoint, this is massive. Let's start with K-12 and public schools. Nearly a $1.4 billion increase in spendable revenue for K-12 schools across the state. It's an increase that's 5 times larger than the increase provided in the most recent state budget. Nearly 60% increase above the previously approved amount for K-12 schools. Largest percent increase in special education reimbursement in state history, which will increase to 42% in the first year of the biennium and 45% in the second year. For context, they were at in the high 20s. They were going to be in the mid 30s was the Republican proposal. After the negotiations, they're in the mid 40s. $30 million for a Get Ahead initiative, another $2 million, etc. In addition to that, for education, let's look at the UW system. They're getting an increase of $256 million. Governor Evers proposed $800 million. I'd heard rumors that Republicans were going to cut the UW budget by about $60 to $80 million. Instead, over $100 million just to support the campuses to stabilize after recent campus closures, layoffs, and program cuts. What does that even mean? We need to give them money to help with the emotional distress of closing a campus? I thought closing a campus was supposed to save money. Why do we need to give them money for that? If anything, the people that were mid-degree at those campuses and had to pivot because their campus closed down, maybe they should be getting this emotional support money, whatever this is. I don't know. Sorry. Weird payoff to cope for the institution. I must be getting it wrong, obviously. It's something I'm missing, I hope. $7 million for mental telehealth services for students, but there's just a laundry list. $840 million for capital building projects. $54 million to retain and recruit faculty and staff in high-demand fields. That's not including $94 million to increase wages for UW system workers, including faculty and staff. I mean, it sounds very government. It's practically the same thing, but two different dollar amounts. Somebody's going to need to explain that to me. Back to the $840 million, $137 million to go to UW Oshkosh for the Learning Commons that's over 50 years old. $194 million to UW La Crosse for a science center. $189 million to UW Milwaukee to renovate a health sciences building. $10 million for a new addition at a residence hall at UW Madison. $98 million for UW Stevens Point for an addition at Century Hall. It's Century Hall. Maybe they can pony up the money for that instead of the taxpayers. I don't know, just throwing that out there. $800,000 for UW Milwaukee for Sandberg Hall East Tower renovations. $32 million to UW Stout for a recreation complex. $19 million, $5 million, $160 million, more and more and more. But that's not even the ending of the spend. Let's go to childcare. $110 million in direct payments to childcare providers to help them keep their doors open. This is interesting because there was a program that did exactly this called Child Care Counts. It was mainly funded by federal dollars. It's been a point of contention. Republicans have said we are not continuing to fund child care counts. The governor wanted to continue to fund child care counts with state funds and use the state funds to cover what the federal government wasn't going to cover anymore. Maybe this was one of the Republican wins where it's doing the same thing. It's just not being called child care counts. Maybe $66 million to help child care providers with 4K programs to help kids get ready for the K-12 classroom. There's also going to be a focus on curriculum in those 4K classrooms, that using curriculum that meets DPI standards for early learning standards. Maybe start them early, get them reading early, and they'll have better outcomes later on. So there's lots of stuff there. Tax cuts are the next thing with they're going to be getting rid of sales taxes on utility bills for energy, etc. They're eliminating the retirement income for folks over 67 for the first $24,000 in their income. There's transportation aids. I'm not even going to get into the income tax cuts. Get into that into another time. Just want to make sure I hit. There's transportation funding. There's going to be $200 million added to solidify the transportation fund, get more money to the roads. There's also going to be, they're going to continue the Agricultural Roads Improvement Program, ARIP. We pushed into this to make sure that it stayed at the level that it was at. $150 million in the last budget. Governor Evers cut it by more than half. That's back, plus a roads fund just for the towns, because there was a towns roads fund that got vetoed by the governor also. That's back. So roads for towns, fixing roads, that's going to be good. Lots of stuff in this budget. Obviously 400 some pages. Can't get to all of it. But back to that point, and Senator Kampenga's point, they're just seeing the final text of what was approved in committee yesterday and are hustling it to the floor session today. And that, from what I'm hearing, is that's why they're in a recess. It's actually being called they're standing informal. I just, in the past hour, I've been on the phone to some Senate staffers, and what appears to be happening is that there are a few spots in this big budget bill that are getting a slight rewrite, because there are a few spots that now people are reading it. They saw They saw some things and said, hold on, there's a few things that may be vulnerable to the governor's line item veto. We better rewrite this, and so they're doing just that. Unfortunately, that means that there's going to be a few more late nights, at least one more tonight in the Capitol, because the budget isn't quite done. We thought it was in the can, and it's unfortunate because I know that there have been people that were hitting late nights and working through last weekend to try and get this done. After it's all said and done, I will have more commentary on the budget coming up in 2 weeks. Sorry to say that next week will be another hiatus for the podcast, but if I don't get eaten by a bear in the Boundary Waters next weekend, I'll get you caught up after that. And finally, because it just hits the right way, I am actually going to go Groundhog's Day on you, and I will leave you with a quote from very, very quotable POTUS number 43, George W. Bush, who got it spot on when he said, "Our view is that taxpayer dollars should be spent wisely or not at all." Have a great second half of your weekend. As always, thanks for listening. The Wisconsin Property Taxpayers Inc. is a nonpartisan membership organization consisting of thousands of small business, farm, and homeowner members in every 4th of July fireworks-loving corner of the state. Founded in 1985, the organization is committed to providing its members with up-to-date information, legislative advocacy, and exclusive cost-saving benefits. Find out how to join at WPTOnline.org/join.